Hey there. Hi, Trish. Oh, man, I'm really sorry about tonight.
What's this?
Oh, those are David's. I think he has a problem.
What are you, some kind of sex pervert? Are you a deviant or
No,
something?
I'm not a sexual
Well,
deviant.
what is all this?
G'day there, my name's Chris.
And I'm Nathan.
And this is Cinema Biosis, the show where we examine a movie and its strange and oftentimes baffling connections to other media. And today, we're discussing Castle Freak from 1995, directed by Stuart Gordon, who was responsible for Reanimator, From Beyond, and inexplicably the story to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Really?
Which actually kind of makes sense when you think about it, because that movie has some horrifying elements.
Yeah.
Not the beast!
I really like a lot of Stuart Gordon. He has a tendency to take a simple horror premise and make it really messed up, oftentimes veering into some pretty uncomfortable perverted territory.
She will go into my mind, and I will go into hers. It's the greatest sensual pleasure there is.
Do you like Stuart Gordon's films, Nathan?
Yeah, he usually does a really good film. Got a couple of favourite actors that he likes to use, Jeffrey Combs being one of them.
Oh, and you won't hear a bad word about Jeffrey Combs from either one of us, because A, Jeffrey Combs is awesome, and B, he once liked a tweet that we sent out from our official Twitter account, which may have been one of the best days of my life. Although to Jeffrey Combs, that might make him think I'm pretty sad, but it's the truth.
I'm very disappointed in you.
So, where does our movie take place, Nathan?
Somewhere in Italy, in an old, dilapidated castle.
And what does it feature, Nathan?
It has a dungeon, and there's a castle freak inside of it, hence the title.
Truly does live up to the title. There is a castle and there is a freak.
I don't know what I expected.
And we must say, before we get into it, that obviously the term freak is a little bit loaded these days. It's not the most polite term. The freak has a name, but it's also in brackets, the freak. So, we're going to use the term that's in the title. We can't really avoid it. But yes, there's someone chained up in the basement.
Anybody there? Come here, kitty.
This castle is owned by an Italian duchess who passes away. And what does she do after she passes away?
Oh, she leaves it to some long-lost relative who, naturally, when you inherit a castle, you inherit everything inside of it, such as the freak in the dungeon.
Yeah, it's left to her estranged American relative, John Riley. Not John C. Riley.
That would be cool.
But yeah, John Riley, played by Jeffrey Combs, has come to Italy to take control over his new estate, as you said, but he's looking to sell it and all the assets on as quickly as possible.
Mr. Giannetti,
Yes?
how soon can you liquidate the assets of the estate?
Oh, you want to sell?
Yes, everything, as soon as possible.
How much is the estate worth? Oh, that is impossible to say.
But the castle itself is pretty interesting to me because it's a bit of a mishmash in regards to the aesthetics.
Oh yeah, it's that's the thing. It's a 700-year-old castle. Sometimes it looks like a 700-year-old castle, and other times it looks just like a hotel.
Yeah, I suppose that's because it's a real castle rather than a set, and those oftentimes get upgraded because people actually live in them. But it's still got a lot of awesome gothic elements to it, like the dungeon and all the creepy artwork. I suppose they could have made it look much older and creepier, but this is a low-budget film with a quick shooting schedule.
Yeah. You're like, yeah, all right, whatever, that'll do.
Yep, we're done for the day. We're meant to be setting up some props in this castle, but we're just going to go get drinks instead.
Excellent.
Look, the castle might be a little inconsistent, but it's a nice place for John and his wife and teenage daughter, but not such a nice place for our castle freak, however.
Yeah, the freak is basically chained up at the base of the castle somewhere, and he gets fed through a bowl slit under his door.
Yeah, so while the Duchess was alive, she used to feed the freak, and it was not much more than a piece of bread and some cat-nibbled salami.
Yeah. And he's always howling. Ooh.
Well, you'd be howling as well if your side dish with every meal was a big old serving of being whipped horribly.
Giorgio.
And to be honest, that's a big whip.
Oh, that ridiculous whip.
Like, that's the whip of someone who loves whipping. Like, she actually whipped herself up into such a frenzy, excuse the pun, that it ended up giving her a heart attack, which is how she died.
Yeah. She's like, oh, god damn, my heart.
Who can say where the road goes?
That whip probably weighs like 20 kilos, so, you know.
Oh, mate, it's her regular exercise, and she loves to swing it. So much so it rubs off onto the castle freak himself, who takes the first opportunity to replicate her behaviour as soon as he gets his hands on the thing.
Yeah, and he's just running around smashing everything with it like, yeah, this is sick. My turn.
Yeah, he's just smashing stuff like he's in Devo or something. Look, despite the bluntness of the title, Castle Freak actually has quite a bit going on in regards to plot, and one of the things we discover throughout the movie is the real identity of the freak.
The Duchess had a son, George.
Well, why didn't he inherit all this?
He died when he was only 5 years old. The husband of the Duchess, she married an American after the war. He abandoned her and his little boy. Soon after that, George was buried.
But that's not what really happened to Giorgio, is it?
She said, oh, my son's dead. He's died. And he didn't. She just locked him in the basement and whips him to make up for the fact that her lover left.
And it's crazy because she's just essentially beating him and depriving him of a life just to get back at this American person who was her husband.
And thinks he's dead anyway, so...
Yeah, it's like it's not getting back at anyone. Everyone thinks he's dead. You're literally just being horrible.
Poor bastard.
You know what? I'm glad she had a heart attack.
Yeah, I know. When she died, you're like, oh. You're like, yeah, good.
But to make things even more complicated, we discover that John Riley's father is the Duchess's former American husband, thus making Giorgio, the castle freak, the main character's half-brother.
But then it's that dynamic you can't really get into too much later on, because the castle freak has no concept of that.
No, the castle freak obviously has thoughts and emotions, but they're pretty blunt and messed up. Like, he doesn't know how to have social interactions, which is a problem, because he escapes his dungeon. How does he do it? Well, first he eats the castle cat in a scene so shocking I had to cover the eyes of my own pet cat sitting on the couch next to me. And then he pulls off his chains.
Well, he figures out that if he loses a finger, he can get one hand out of the chain.
That's not right. No.
And of course, once Giorgio has escaped, a ruckus ensues. But honestly, what makes this movie stand out is the really interesting character work going on.
Stuart's films are character-based. And I think that there are some real complex relationships in this movie.
For instance, our main character is on the rocks with his wife because he's a former alcoholic who had a car accident that led to blinding his teenage daughter.
And killed his 5-year-old son. So that all links back to Giorgio being 5 when he disappeared.
Oh, exactly, yeah. Giorgio allegedly died at the same age, and that makes John Riley, the character, like, very distressed, which doesn't make him look the most reputable of individuals in the eyes of the law, especially when he's, like, busting open crypts.
Yeah, pulls out the
open
kid's
coffins.
coffin. It's like, look, it's empty. You're like, yeah, you could have done that way smoother, man.
He's not here. Giorgio Dorsino. He was never buried. She kept him alive. He's alive.
But yeah, I thought it was pretty interesting to see a blind character in a horror film.
There's actually some pretty cool scenes where she's being kind of tormented in the castle. She knows someone's there, she can hear them, whatever, but she can't see them. So people think it's just her not getting used to the sounds of the castle and stuff.
My daughter said that she did hear something.
I'm certain she did. A castle makes many sounds, especially at night.
I know you're there!
I just love how that cop dismisses the possibility of anything strange at first, yet something ran around the house, broke a mirror, stole a sheet off the daughter's bed, and is now pretending they're a ghost.
This is so corny. Is this what we've been reduced to, sheets?
But that disbelief and confusion feeds into the characters and actually drives our main protagonist somewhat mad, and he even ends up drinking again, which leads us into what's going to be a strange conversation about the sexual undertones in this movie, because, to be blunt, it gets weird.
Definitely, but it's a Stuart Gordon film. They've always got something like that in it.
Oh god, yeah, like the head scene in Reanimator.
Yes, my love.
I mean, horror films, especially slashers, always have a sexual element to them. You got the killer with the phallic knife chasing around women. You got lots of young teens spending most of their time trying to bed one another.
Yeah, Stuart Gordon doesn't... The way he shoots it and stuff, there's no part of it where you're like, it's not erotic. To put it in any other term, it's like disturbing. You're like, ugh.
No, not at all. Especially when we discover our castle freak is feeling a little randy, but let's say lacks the equipment for the job thanks to his mother. I'm not going to be able to show the full-on image you get in the movie, but here's a visual representation of what's happened to him.
My groin!
Oh, but he tries even if he lacks the equipment. In a drunken stupor, John picks up an Italian prostitute and brings her back to the castle, and Giorgio creepily watches them have sex.
And then he grabs her and tries to, like, replicate the situation, but can't?
Yeah, it's like he can't enact this masculine act, so he resorts to another masculine act, which is violence. And we really can't show much here in this video, lest we lose our YouTube account, but let's just say it always involves soft lady parts and lots of teeth.
That actor, he does an awesome job as a castle freak.
This is Giorgio without makeup. This is me, what I really look like.
One of the reasons I got into acting to begin with, when I was a strange kid. Who wouldn't be to put up with this, right?
Yeah, everyone does a great job in this film. Some people might find the acting a bit overdramatic in parts, but it's almost like a stage performance, which makes sense when you remember Stuart Gordon's background is in theatre. But yeah, it's great to see the familiar faces of Jeffrey Combs and Barbara Crampton.
Yeah, Stuart Gordon, has his favourite actors that he goes back to, and there's a reason for it. They all work well together. It's a good dynamic, good character actors. If I'm honest, at the start of this film I was watching it, was kind of like half an hour, and I was like, how long has this gone for? It kind of, after the initial start of the introduction of the freak kind of thing, what was happening to him, it slowed right down to build your characters back up, which if they weren't good actors and it wasn't convincing, you'd just be bored.
Oh, 100%. Those early scenes are completely made by the work of Barbara Crampton, Jessica Dolarhyde as the daughter, Jonathan Fuller as Giorgio the freak, and of course, Jeffrey Combs, who just blows it out of the water for me. Without him, the first half would honestly crash and burn, although I'm sure in all his modesty he would say it's a group effort.
That's ridiculous. I didn't do anything.
So, Castle Freak was made by Full Moon Entertainment under Charles Band, who brought us some of the greatest B-grade films of all time. Trances, or as it's known in Australia,
Future Cop.
Future Cop is amazing. Anyone who follows us on Instagram will see that I did a little post about that film.
Oh, God, it's great.
They also did Doll Man,
13 Inches with an Attitude,
Puppet Master, and more recently, the esteemed Evil Bong series.
I've got something here that I think you'll find very interesting.
Looks like some kind of space bomb.
Evil Bong 3D.
So the story of how Castle Freak entered production is really fascinating to me. The director Stuart Gordon was in Charles Band's office, who owned Full Moon, and he saw a poster with a Quasimodo-like man being whipped by a woman. Gordon asked about it, and Band offered him the movie. There was no script, but Gordon could make it as long as he maintained a few key ideas. There had to be a castle, and there had to be a freak.
This Castle Freak movie has to have a castle and a freak. Go.
Well, you're making it sound pretty easy, but it was a little bit more complicated than that because there was another condition, which is the film had to be made for an incredibly low budget. But Gordon agreed because he was allowed complete creative control. But what blows me away is the turnaround from this meeting to actual on-location shooting was only around 6 months, which is insanely fast.
Yeah. Especially considering they had to find a castle as a location for starters.
Well, you say that, but arguably this is why Charles Band wanted to make a castle freak movie. It would seem he owned an Italian castle and he had used it already as a setting for some other films.
Stuart Gordon returns to Giove, Italy, the setting of Full Moon's Pit and the Pendulum.
So Stuart went away to go write the script, and it was loosely inspired by the short story The Outsider by H.P. Lovecraft and has some elements of The Rats in the Walls by H.P. Lovecraft.
Yeah.
Which makes sense, because Gordon has a history of playing with Lovecraft's world. He doesn't really adapt Lovecraft, but he just takes certain ideas and runs with them.
Yeah.
So things like Reanimator.
Well, that's it. A lot of his movies, Reanimator, From Beyond, they say H.P. Lovecraft. You're like, yeah, kind of.
Oh, yeah. He always just gets the core idea and runs off with it and takes it into his little own messed up world. And I say that in, like, the kindest terms.
Yeah.
Gruber!
Unfortunately, the film didn't do too well, though, because Full Moon was having financial problems at the time.
Yeah.
And it's only been in recent years that Castle Freak has found popularity.
And it's a good thing.
Gordon had a theory on why it didn't do too well. And I actually think it's hilarious when you remember the film was made solely because of speculative art. So they literally couldn't afford to make any one-sheet posters, which are advertisements that include a little bit of info on the film and some poster art or screenshots.
They couldn't. We can't advertise this movie at all. Hopefully someone sees it.
Yeah, which is the death knell for a straight-to-video, because you need those to give to distributors and video shops so that they can actually know what they're buying.
Yeah.
And like oftentimes little low-budget production houses will just show them the production art. And it's like, well, you had the production art. That's why the movie was made.
Yeah, you had it right there. That's why you made the movie. Show them that.
Another terrifying collaboration with Stuart Gordon and Full Moon.
But even if the film didn't do well upon release, it is getting a remake this year. And interestingly, it will be taking the H.P. Lovecraft influence and expanding on it. Because not only is this a reimagining of Gordon's original film, it's also the setup for a larger series built around the universe of Lovecraft.
Okay, that could be cool.
Yeah, I just hope they keep it as messed up and transgressive as the original, because honestly, that's my favourite part about Gordon's film. And I'm sure saying that has put me on a watch list of some description, but whatever.
I'm not going to answer any questions until I talk to my lawyer.
So, Chris, would you recommend Castle Freak?
Look, it's a bit of a weird one because the first maybe 30 minutes is pretty bland. Like, it's just people walking around in this location that they're allowed to film for free because it's owned by the production company. And look, there's interesting character elements, but the only thing that was keeping me going was the actors and the actresses. They were doing a fantastic job, which kept me invested. But as soon as we started getting like a little bit more character backstory, like when, the alcoholic Jeffrey Combs character discovers there's a cellar full of wine, and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting complication. As soon as we started getting those little like extra turns in the plot, I was like, okay, I can get on board here. And then, of course, when it starts getting like weird and messed up, I'm like, yeah, I'm on board because I have problems, and that's fine. What about you, Nathan? Would you recommend it?
Yeah, I'm basically the same as you. At first, when I was watching it, I was like, oh, this is kind of starting to feel like one of those, those bad B movies where it's really dull and they're just filling it with exposition. But no, everything that's said and everything they do comes back around and has a meaning and a point.
Which is shocking for a film we review.
Yeah, it actually ends up becoming a really interesting film by the end. And you're like, oh, wow, this is actually really good. So yeah, no, I recommend it. You've got to be listening. Let's put it that way. You can't just have this on in the background and do something else. A lot of what people say and interact with each other comes back around.
Almost like it's a real movie.
Yeah, like a proper film called Castle Freak.
Yeah, I know. Thanks for watching, folks. If you enjoyed this video, please make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the bell. We regularly upload content about B-movies, cult cinema, and other trash video oddities. Until next time, stay safe and stay weird.